The silent guardian Mason Reed wiped grease from his hands as he adjusted the power coupling on the damaged thruster. Sweat beaded on his forehead in the sweltering heat of Outpost Zenith, a trading hub where 3-star systems intersected. His repair shop, nestled between alien food stalls and questionable merchandise vendors, had become his sanctuary since leaving Earth's military 5 years ago. That should hold it, he muttered to himself, testing the connection. The engine hummed to life, its blue glow illuminating his weathered face. At 37, lines had formed around his eyes, not just from age, but from witnessing things no human should. The shop door chimed. Mason didn't look up. "We're closed," he called out, continuing his work. "Come back tomorrow. Please," came a soft voice, high-pitched and melodious, with an otherworldly lilt. "I need help now." Mason turned to see a slender Cerealian, her skin a pale lavender hue that caught the workshop's dim light. Like all her kind, she had 2 arms, 2 legs, and 5 fingers on each hand. But her large eyes, deep violet with no visible pupils, marked her as non-human. She couldn't have been more than 14 in Earth years. "Kid, I fix ships, not problems," Mason said, turning back to the thruster. "The assistance center is 3 levels up. They won't help me." The girl stepped closer, her bare feet making no sound on the metal floor. "The Dominion officials run it? They're the ones who took my sister." Something in her voice made Mason pause. He'd heard that tone before on battlefields, in refugee camps, in places where hope had all but vanished. "I'm Lyra," she continued, fidgeting with the hem of her simple gray tunic. "My sister Alicia was taken 3 rotations ago. They said she violated trade regulations, but she didn't." She just Lyra's voice broke. Mason sighed, setting down his tools. "Why come to me?" "There are plenty of other shops in this sector. 'Cause you're human," she said simply. "Humans help. That's what my mother always told us." Mason almost laughed. If only she knew how many humans had walked away when help was needed most. "Your mother was optimistic. And you wear this." Lyra pointed to the small insignia Mason had forgotten was pinned to his tool belt, a faded emblem of Earth's peacekeeping force. "That's old news," he said, removing the pin and pocketing it. "Look, I'm sorry about your sister, but I can't help you. The Dominion doesn't take kindly to interference, especially from off-worlders." Lyra stepped closer, her large eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "I'll do anything. I'll work for you. I'll be your servant or slave, even." The word hung in the air between them. "Just please help me find Alicia." Mason's jaw tightened. Slave. The word hit him like a physical blow. He'd fought against such practices on 3 different worlds. "Never say that," he said sharply. "Not to me. Not to anyone." Lyra flinched, taking a step back. Mason ran a hand through his short brown hair, cursing under his breath. "Where were you living before they took your sister?" "Level 8, Section C, near the water reclamation plant. The poorest section of the outpost. Of course, your parents? Gone 3 cycles ago in the mining collapse on Vega Prime. It's just been Alicia and me since then." Mason turned back to the thruster, tightening a bolt with more force than necessary. Every instinct told him to stay out of it. He'd survived this long by keeping his head down, by not making waves. The Dominion tolerated humans, but barely.
"Please?"
Lyra whispered. "She's all I have." The bolt snapped in Mason's hand, the sharp metal cutting into his palm. He barely noticed the blood. "One night," he said finally, not looking at her. "You can stay 1 night. We'll figure something out in the morning." Lyra's face lit up, her skin glowing slightly, a Cerealian trait when experiencing strong emotions. "Thank you. I promise I won't be trouble." "Already are," Mason muttered, but without real anger. He gestured to a small cot in the corner of the workshop. "You can sleep there. I'll be upstairs if you need anything." As Mason climbed the metal stairs to his modest living quarters above the shop, he wondered what he was getting himself into. The Dominion wasn't known for mercy, especially toward those who challenged their authority. But something about the girl's desperate. Plea had broken through walls he'd spent years building. Perhaps it was her willingness to sacrifice everything for someone she loved. Or perhaps, despite his best efforts, some part of the soldier he'd once been still remained. Whatever the reason, Mason Reed, who had sworn never to fight another battle that wasn't his, found himself preparing for war once more. Desperate Measures morning arrived with the artificial glow of Outpost Zenith's regulated light cycle. Mason descended the stairs to find Lyra already awake. Carefully organizing his scattered tools into neat rows. "You don't have to do that," he said. Reaching for the coffee substitute, the locals brewed from some kind of fungus. It tasted terrible, but delivered the necessary jolt to his system. "I want to help," Lyra replied, her delicate fingers arranging wrenches by size. "Elysia always says idle hands find trouble." "Your sister sounds wise," Mason observed, studying the young Cerulean. In the better light, he noticed the worn patches on her clothes and the slight hollow to her cheeks. "When did you last eat?" Lyra shrugged, her shoulder blades moving visibly beneath her thin tunic. "Yesterday. Maybe the day before." Without a word, Mason rummaged through his storage unit and produced a nutrient bar. Not delicious, but filling. He tossed it to her, and she caught it with surprising dexterity. "So tell me about this sister of yours," he said, leaning against his workbench. "What exactly did she do to attract Dominion attention?" Lyra took a small, careful bite before answering. "Elysia works 'tis a data clerk for one of the shipping companies. She noticed discrepancies in cargo manifests. Items arriving that weren't listed, or listed items never arriving." Mason frowned. Smuggling? That's what she thought. But when she started tracking the patterns, she realized it wasn't random. All the irregularities involved medical supplies going to the research facility on level 12, the restricted zone. Mason's frown deepened. He'd repaired ships for Dominion officials, but had never been permitted beyond the outer docking area of level 12. Did she report it? Lyra's violet eyes darkened. To her supervisor. "The next day, Dominion security came to our quarters and took her. They said she was stealing company data." She looked down at her half-eaten nutrient bar. "I followed them. I heard one officer say they were taking her to join the program, whatever that means." Mason's mind raced. The Dominion controlled dozens of outposts, like Zenith, across this sector of space, maintaining what they called peace through strict regulations and swift punishment. But rumors had circulated for years about experiments biological, testing on various species to create something the Dominion needed. "We can't just walk into a Dominion facility and demand your sister back," Mason said, thinking aloud. "We need leverage. Information. I have this." Lyra reached into a hidden pocket in her tunic and pulled out a small data chip. "Elysia gave it to me before they came. She said it was insurance." Mason took the chip, examining it. "Have you looked at what's on it?" Lyra shook her head. "I don't have access to a reader, and I was afraid they might track it if I used a public terminal." "Smart kid," Mason murmured. He inserted the chip into his personal device, shielded from outpost surveillance. The screen illuminated with shipping manifests, medical supply inventories, and most disturbing personnel files. Not just names, but species classifications, genetic markers, and something called compatibility ratings. "This is ... Mason scrolled through the files, a knot forming in his stomach. "This looks like they're selecting specific individuals for something." A soft chime from the door interrupted them. Mason quickly pocketed the device and nodded for Lyra to hide. She slipped behind a large engine block just as the door slid open. 2 Dominion security officers entered, their gray uniforms immaculate, hands resting on pulse weapons. Behind them stood a Cerulean male in elaborate robes, a Dominion administrator by the insignia. Mason Reed, the administrator, spoke, his violet eyes similar to Lyra's, but cold and calculating. "I am Overseer Nix. We have reports of a fugitive juvenile in this area." A Cerulean female. Mason wiped his hands on a rag, maintaining a casual stance. "A lot of people come through here. I fix ships, not track children." Nix's lips thinned. "This particular child is connected to a security breach. Harboring her would constitute interference with Dominion operations." His eyes scanned the workshop. A serious offense, especially for an off-worlder with limited standing. The threat hung in the air between them. Mason had seen what happened to those who crossed the Dominion. Deportation was the kindest outcome. Like I said, I haven't seen any children, Mason replied evenly. Now, unless you need engine work, I have paying customers waiting. One of the security officers stepped forward. Perhaps we should conduct a search that won't be necessary, interrupted a new voice. A human woman stood in the doorway, her dark skin contrasting with the crisp white uniform of the Interstellar Commerce Guild. Mason Reed is currently under guild contract. His premises fall under trade protection protocols. The woman, tall, with closely cropped hair and sharp eyes, held up a badge. Inspector Zara Wells. Is there a problem here, Overseer? Nix's expression flickered with annoyance. Guild jurisdiction doesn't supersede security matters. Actually, according to Treaty Section 47. It does when involving independent contractors, Zara replied smoothly, unless you have a specific warrant. For a moment, tension crackled between them. Then Nix inclined his head slightly. We'll return with proper documentation. Good day, Inspector. His eyes shifted to Mason. We'll speak again soon. After they departed, Mason exhaled slowly. Lyra peeked out from her hiding spot. Zara turned to them both, her professional demeanor dropping. What in the seven systems have you gotten yourself into, Mason? Dominion officials don't make house calls for minor infractions. An old friend of yours? Lyra asked, emerging fully. Not exactly, Mason replied. Zara and I have a complicated history. That's one word for it, Zara muttered. You know, they'll be back, right? With a warrant that even guild protection can't block. Mason nodded, making a quick decision. Then we need to move fast. Lyra, grab whatever you brought with you. Zara, I need access to the station's personnel files. Whoa, slow down. Zara held up her hands. I stuck my neck out because I owed you from Proxima. That doesn't mean I'm joining whatever crusade you're on. Mason stepped closer, lowering his voice. They took her sister. For the program, and based on what I just saw, they're collecting specific genetic profiles. Zara's expression changed, a shadow passing over her features. Show me. As Mason displayed the files from Lyra's chip, Zara's professional composure crumbled. This matches what we've been hearing. Disappearances across multiple outposts, always individuals with rare genetic markers. She looked at Lyra with new understanding. If your sister has the same genetic structure as you, ... We need to find her, Mason said firmly. Tonight? Zara hesitated only briefly before nodding. I know someone who can help. But Mason, her eyes locked with his. This might force you to become the man you've been running from. Mason glanced at Lyra, who watched them with desperate hope in her large eyes. Some things are worth fighting for. As they prepared to leave, Mason retrieved something he'd hidden away years ago, a compact military-grade blaster. The weight of it in his hand felt simultaneously foreign and familiar, like greeting an old friend he'd hoped never to see again, whatever the Dominion was doing. Whatever program had taken Lyra's sister, they would soon discover that they'd made a critical error. They'd given a former Earth, Special Forces operative, something to fight for again. Unforeseen Alliance, the lower levels of Outpost Zenith, buzzed with the chaotic energy of 1,000 different species, conducting business beyond the watchful eyes of Dominion officials. Mason led Lyra through winding corridors. Following Zara's quick steps as she navigated the labyrinth with practiced ease, Your contact better be reliable, Mason muttered, keeping Lyra close as they passed a group of Krell traders, their scaled skin glistening under the dim lights. Tarek's information is always good, Zara replied. Whether you'll like what he has to say is another matter. They descended a narrow staircase and entered a section that appeared abandoned maintenance panels exposed, lighting flickering erratically. Zara stopped at a nondescript door and knocked in a specific pattern. The door slid open to reveal a cramped space filled with monitors and communication equipment. A lean figure hunched over a central consolant Cerealian, or human. But Vexen, with 6-fingered hands moving rapidly across multiple interfaces. Zara, the figure spoke without turning. Bringing friends to my doorstep is poor protocol. These aren't friends, Tarek. They're clients. Tarek swiveled his chair, revealing a face dominated by 4 amber eyes arranged in a diamond pattern. His skin held a metallic sheen, almost bronze, in the blue glow of the monitors. The human I know, Tarek said, studying Mason. Ex-military. Special operations, if I had to guess. Keeps to himself, fixes ships, and drinks alone at Joro's establishment every 6th rotation. His upper eyes shifted to Lyra. Young Cerulean, however, is new and dangerous to harbor, considering the alert issued this morning. Lyra stepped forward. They took my sister, Alicia. She discovered something in shipping records. Show him. Mason nodded to Zara, who produced the data chip. Tara inserted it into his system, its fingers dancing across the interface. The room filled with holographic projections of the file's shipping manifests, personnel records, and genetic profiles expanding in 3-dimensional detail. Interesting, Tarek murmured, manipulating the data. Very interesting. Can you tell us what they're doing? Mason asked. Tarek's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. The Dominion is collecting individuals with specific genetic markers variants that appear across multiple species. Your sister, he looked at Lyra, possesses an uncommon sequence in her neural patterning. A sequence that allows for unusual psychic resonance. Psychic. Mason frowned. Like mind reading? More complex. Certain species, including Ceruleans, have latent abilities to connect with quantum fields to sense and potentially manipulate the underlying fabric of reality. Lyra shook her head. Alicia doesn't have powers. We'd know. Not active abilities, Tarek clarified. The potential, which is precisely what makes her valuable. The Dominion isn't interested in those who can already access these abilities. They want those who could be ... enhanced. Enhanced how? Zara asked. Tarek expanded another file, revealing schematics for a device Mason didn't recognize. They're developing technology to artificially stimulate and amplify these latent abilities, creating weapons more powerful than any conventional arms. They're weaponizing people, Mason said quietly. The realization hitting him like a physical blow. Lyra's skin paled to an almost white shade. Will it hurt her? The silence that followed was answer enough. Mason's hands clenched into fists. Where are they keeping her? Level 12 isn't just restricted. It's a fortress, Tarek replied, bringing up a schematic of the outpost. Multiple security checkpoints, biometric scanners, armed guards. No one gets in without clearance. I don't need to get in, Zara interrupted. I just need access to their communication systems. If I can get proof of unauthorized experimentation, I can invoke guild emergency protocols. Tarek laughed a strange metallic sound. By the time your guild bureaucracy responds, the girl will be processed and integrated into their program. Then we go in ourselves, Mason stated simply. Suicide? Tarek responded. Not necessarily, came a new voice. From the shadows at the back of the room emerged a tall, lean Cerulean male. Unlike Lyra's lavender hue, his skin was deep indigo, marked with silver patterns that suggested military rank. There are ways into level 12 that aren't on any schematic. Zara's hand moved to her concealed weapon. You didn't mention we had company, Tarek. Commander Sarix is my associate, Tarek said calmly. And perhaps the most valuable ally you could hope for in this matter. Mason studied the newcomer with suspicion. You're Dominion military? Was Sarix corrected? Until I discovered what my superiors were doing with my people. With all our people. His violet eyes found Lyra's. Your sister isn't the first they've taken, child. But with help, she might be among the last. A Dominion commander turned resistance fighter, Mason said skeptically. Convenient timing. Sarix approached, moving with the fluid grace characteristic of his species. The Dominion believes Ceruleans are particularly compatible with their enhancement process because of our natural neural pathways. My own daughter was taken 3 cycles ago for the program. I never saw her again. Something in his voice, raw pain barely contained, convinced Mason more than any words could have. What can you tell us about the facility? Mason asked. Sarix joined them at the console, manipulating the holographic display to reveal hidden sections of level 12. The main laboratory is here. Central chamber. Security is heaviest around the perimeter, but thins near the core. They don't expect threats from within. What are you suggesting? Zara asked. I'm not suggesting anything, Sarex replied. I'm stating a fact. I have access codes to the secondary maintenance shaft. It leads directly to the lower level of the research facility. Why haven't you used them yourself? Mason challenged. One person alone would be detected immediately, but a coordinated team, creating diversions at specific points. Sarex looked at each of them in turn. It could work. Lyra stepped forward, her young face set with determination. I'll do whatever it takes to save my sister. No, Mason said firmly. You're staying here with Tarek? But this isn't negotiable. Mason cut her off. We're trying to get your sister out, not give them another test subject. Sarex nodded in agreement. The human is right. Besides, we need Tarek to disable the security systems, and he'll need assistance monitoring the communications. Reluctantly, Lyra nodded as they began formulating their plan. Mason found himself in the strange position of working alongside the Dominion commander, the very enemy he'd once fought against in Earth's border conflicts. Yet looking at Sarex, he saw not an alien adversary, but a father who'd lost his child to the same system, now threatening Lyra's sister. We move tonight, Sarex announced, indicating a maintenance cycle when security would rotate shifts. The girl stays here under Tarek's protection. Zara creates a diplomatic incident at the main checkpoint as distraction. Mason and I infiltrate through the maintenance shaft. What about extraction? Mason asked. Even if we get to Elysia, getting back out won't be simple.
At Elysia's.
Sarix's expression hardened. Leave that to me. I've arranged transportation that the Dominion won't be able to track or stop. As they finalized details, Mason pulled Zara aside. If this goes sideways, I'll get the girl somewhere safe, she promised, anticipating his concern. There are guild outposts beyond Dominion reach. Mason nodded gratefully, then turned to prepare his equipment. As he checked his weapon, he caught Lyra watching him, her large eyes filled with equal parts hope and fear. You'll bring her back? She asked softly. You promise? Mason had made few promises in his life since leaving military service. Promises had weight, created bonds that could pull you under. But looking at this child who had already lost so much, he found himself nodding. I promise. In that moment, under the blue glow of Tarek's monitors, surrounded by unlikely allies, Mason realized he was no longer just fighting to save one Cerulean girl. He was taking a stand against the system he'd spent years avoiding, a system that saw people as resources to be exploited, as weapons to be wielded, and for the first time in 5 years, the weight of that fight felt right. That's suicide, Sarex argued. Probably, Mason agreed, carefully transferring Elysia to Sarex's arms. But some things are worth dying for. He looked at Elysia's weakened form. Make sure she gets back to her sister. Before Sarex could protest further, Mason turned and sprinted toward the central laboratory. Behind him, he heard Sarex calling his name, and silence as they diverged onto separate paths. The central laboratory appeared deserted, staff having evacuated at the first alarm. Mason moved quickly to the main terminal, inserting a data spike Tarek had provided to download the research files. Download initiated, the computer announced. Estimated completion, 5 minutes. Purge protocol in 6 minutes, countered the facility's system. Come on, Mason muttered, watching the progress indicator crawl forward as precious seconds ticked away. From this terminal, he could see exactly what they'd been doing. Neural mapping, consciousness, fragmentation, the creation of a hive mind from individual test subjects. They weren't just making weapons. They were building a living network to control space itself. As the download reached completion, the laboratory door slid open. Mason whirled, blaster raised. To find himself facing a tall Dominion official, in an elaborate uniform adorned with medals and insignia of the highest rank, Commander Vexus Mason recognized the man from intelligence briefings years ago. The architect of the Dominion's expansion, responsible for countless atrocities across multiple systems. A human Vexus, observed with mild curiosity. How fascinating. Did you really think you could interfere with my work and escape? Already have the data, Mason replied, removing the spike and pocketing it. Your work is about to become public knowledge. Vexus smiled coldly. And who will care? The Ceruleans. The Vexans. Each species looks to its own interests. No one will challenge the Dominion for the sake of a few test subjects. Humans might. Ah yes, humanity's famous moral outrage, Vexus scoffed. So selective, so temporary. You'll protest, perhaps impose symbolic sanctions, then return to business as usual. Mason raised his blaster. I'm not talking about politics. I'm talking about people who see others treated like lab animals and decide to do something about it. Vexus's hand moved to his own weapon, but Mason was faster. The blast caught Vexus in the shoulder, spinning him back against the wall. Purge protocol in 3 minutes, announced the system. Mason grabbed the wounded commander, dragging him toward the exit. You're coming with me. Someone should answer for what happened here. You think this changes anything? Vexus snarled, blood seeping through his elaborate uniform. I am the Dominion. Not anymore, Mason replied, forcing him forward as they raced against the countdown. The facility was collapsing around them, systems shutting down, emergency lights flickering. Mason pushed onward, half-dragging the Dominion commander through corridors. Rapidly filling with emergency containment foam, they reached the evacuation route with seconds to spare. Forcing their way through as the final doors began to seal. The force of the closing mechanism caught Mason's leg, sending white-hot pain shooting up his thigh. With a final effort, he pulled himself and Vexus through the narrowing gap. Rolling into the evacuation tunnel as the facility sealed behind them made it. Mason gasped, his leg radiating pain but still functional. Vexus laughed weakly beside him. Perhaps, but what exactly have you won, human? Mason didn't answer as he forced himself to his feet, securing Vexus's hands before continuing down the tunnel toward whatever awaited them at the other end. Whatever the cost, whatever came next, he had kept his promise to Lyra. And for now, that was enough. New beginnings? The extraction point was chaos emergency alarms. Blaring throughout the lower levels as the Dominion initiated a station-wide search, Mason limped through the maintenance corridor, pushing the wounded Commander Vexus ahead of him. Blood soaked through the makeshift bandage on Mason's thigh, but adrenaline kept him moving forward. They'll kill you for this, Vexus muttered, his arrogance diminished by pain and the humiliation of capture. The Dominion does not forget. Neither do I, Mason replied, checking his scanner. The rendezvous point was just ahead, a small docking bay reserved for maintenance vessels. Supposedly overlooked in the security lockdown, the bay doors slid open to reveal Sarek standing, guard, his posture alert, a Dominion pulse rifle held with practiced ease. Behind him, a sleek shuttle hummed with pre-launch preparations. Relief washed over Mason when he spotted Elysia inside, conscious now, sitting upright with Zara's supportive arm around her shoulders. You made it, Sarek said, his violet eyes widening at the sight of Vexus. And you brought unexpected cargo. Evidence that talks, Mason explained, shoving the commander forward. Where's Tarek? Coming with Lyra. They're taking a different route to avoid detection. As if summoned by his words, a side panel in the docking bay slid open. Tarek emerged first, his 4 amber eyes rapidly scanning the area before gesturing behind him. Lyra rushed past him, freezing momentarily at the sight of her sister. Elysia. Oh? The young Cerulean's voice broke with emotion as she ran toward the shuttle. The sisters' reunion pierced through the tension of the moment. Lyra, throwing her arms around Elysia, both of them shaking with sobs. Their skin glowed with heightened emotion, casting a soft lavender light that seemed to fill the shuttle's interior. We need to move, Tarek announced, sealing the entrance behind him. Dominion security has discovered the evacuation route. They'll be here in minutes. The shuttle's prepped for launch, Sarek confirmed. But the station's defense systems will lock onto us the moment we exit the bay. I had a feeling you'd say that, Mason replied, pulling the data spike from his pocket. Which is why this contains more than just research data. It is Commander Vex's authorization codes, including defense system overrides. Tarek took the spike, his 6 fingers working rapidly over its interface. Brilliant, eh? With this, I can temporarily disable the weapons grid. He paused, eyeing Vexus. Though I must admit, having the commander himself offers certain advantages. He stands trial, Mason said firmly. For what he's done to those people back there. For what he did to Alicia, Vexus laughed bitterly. Trial? By whom? The guild has no jurisdiction here. Earth is too far to care. The Dominion Council answers to me. Not anymore, Cyric stated, producing a small communication device. This broadcast has been streaming to every Dominion outpost in the sector for the past 10 minutes. Your research, your test subjects, your words when you confronted Mason, all of it, live. Color drained from Vexus's face as he realized the implications. Ken already did, Tarek confirmed, checking his own devices. And the response is, interesting. 3 Dominion cruisers have broken formation. It appears not everyone in your military approves of experimenting on sentient beings. A proximity alarm blared, interrupting the moment of victory. Security teams approaching, Zara called from the shuttle. We need to leave now. They boarded quickly. Tarek taking the pilot's position, while Sarek secured Vexus in the cargo hold. Mason paused at the entrance, looking back at the station that had been his home for 5 years. Having second thoughts? Zara asked, appearing beside him. Wondering where we go from here? Mason admitted. The Dominion won't let this stand. That's why we're not going anywhere the Dominion controls, she replied. The Guild has outposts beyond their reach. Places where people like Elysia can recover, where evidence can be compiled and distributed. And after that, Zara's expression softened. One battle at a time, soldier. The shuttle's engines roared to life as the bay doors opened to reveal the vastness of space beyond. They accelerated smoothly, the station rapidly shrinking behind them. No pursuit vessels launched, no weapons fired. Vexus's codes had worked. In the passenger compartment, Mason found Lyra sitting beside her sister, their hands intertwined. Elysia looked up as he approached, her eyes clear now, but shadowed with the memory of what she'd endured. Thank you, she said simply. For keeping your promise to my sister? Mason nodded, uncomfortable with gratitude he wasn't sure he deserved. How are you feeling? Like I've been taken apart and put back together wrong, Elysia admitted. But the pieces are still there. I can find my way back, given time. The others, Mason said quietly. The ones we left behind, we'll go back for them. Lyra interjected with fierce determination, won't we? The question hung in the air, a challenge, a promise, a future none of them had planned for. There's more, Elysia said, her voice strengthening. What I found in those shipping records wasn't just about medical supplies. The Dominion is building these facilities throughout the sector, collecting specific genetic profiles from dozens of species. Why? Zara asked, joining them. What could possibly justify such a program? Fear, Elysia replied. They discovered something at the edge of known spaceteer in reality itself. Their conventional weapons couldn't touch it, but they found that certain beings with certain genetic markers could sense it, could potentially close it. So instead of asking for help, they abducted people and experimented on them, Mason concluded grimly. The Dominion never asks, Sarek commented, emerging from the cargo hold. It takes... That has always been our way. He looked troubled, a commander confronting the sins of the system he'd served. Until now, Tarek's voice came over the internal cum. We've cleared the station's defensive perimeter, setting course for Guild safe haven in the Palace Nebula. A moment of collective relief passed through the shuttle. They had escaped. They'd survived. But the implications of what they'd discovered and what lay ahead weighed heavily on everyone's minds. What will happen to us now? Lyra asked, her young voice cutting through the silence. Mason looked at hers, child who had offered herself. As a slave just to save her sister, who had shown more courage than many soldiers he'd served with? You'll be safe, he promised. Both of you. And after that, Elysia pressed, when I've recovered. When the evidence has been presented. What then? Mason read. Do you return to fixing ships and drinking alone? The question struck deeper than she could know. For 5 years, he had existed rather than lived, hiding from his past and avoiding connections that might lead to more pain, more loss. I don't know, he answered honestly. I haven't thought that far ahead. I have, Lyra said with unexpected conviction. We fight back. We find the others like Alicia. We stop the Dominion from hurting more people. A resistance, Eric's mused. Led by a human, a guild inspector, a Vexen information broker, a disgraced Dominion commander, and 2 Cerealian sisters. He shook his head. The odds are not favorable. When have they ever been? Mason found himself smiling, a genuine expression that felt foreign on his face after so many years of careful neutrality. Zara studied him. This isn't your fight, Mason. You did what you promised. You saved the girl. No one would blame you for walking away.